Hello everyone, this is my video on the research I did on PCP, ketamine, and other dissociative anesthetics. So I have it all written down here. We'll start with the abuse prevalence in the US versus South Dakota. For the US, according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, hallucinogen use, which includes dissociative drugs like PCP and ketamine, has seen an upward trend with approximately 3.6% of the population aged 12 or older reporting past year use. While historic PCP use has remained low, roughly 0.7% among high school seniors, recreational ketamine use has risen a lot, seeing a 40% surge among adults in recent surveys. For South Dakota specifically, data from community health needs assessments and state tracking showed that hallucinogen and dissociative drug abuse accounts for roughly 1.6% of surveyed illicit substance responses. Local enforcement encounters PCP rarely, while ketamine or novel synthetic dissociatives appear occasionally in polydrug or nightlife settings like clubs. How people obtain these drugs. So there's a few different ways. There's the illicit market or the black market or street sales. PCP is primarily manufactured in laboratories and sold on the black market as a liquid powder or sprayed onto a sort of leafy material like mint or marijuana. Ketamine is a legally manufactured prescription anesthetic. It is often obtained through the diversion of supplies from vet clinics or medical offices. Surveys also show that a vast majority of users obtain these drugs through friend groups, personal dealers, or increasingly on darknet websites like the black web or the black market or the dark web, and encrypted messaging apps. So as for social stratification and vulnerable populations, substantial age stratification does exist with these drugs. Ketamine use is heavily concentrated among older adolescents and young adults, primarily ages 18 to 34. For socioeconomic status and education, unlike a lot of other substances, recent NSDUH data reveals that people with college degrees or higher education are more than twice as likely to use ketamine recreationally compared to those with a high school education or less, which was interesting to me. Subculture clusters. These drugs are heavily correlated with specific nightlife cultures, like I said, clubs, festivals, things like that. Furthermore, there were studies that showed higher prevalence rates among certain marginalized groups, such as the LGBTQ plus community, like I said, specifically in those subcultures. As for immediate effects, purpose, and addictiveness, why people use these dissociatives are NMDA receptor antagonists. Users seek them out for feelings of detachment from reality, distortions of sight and sound, euphoria, and a sense of weightlessness or floating out of their bodies. The immediate effects of these drugs, low to moderate doses, will create numbness, slurred speech, loss of coordination, and feelings of detachment. High doses is what they would call a K-hole or PCP psychosis. Sounds terrifying. Hallucinations, complete disassociation, insensitivity to pain, catatonia, severe paranoia, and unpredictable or aggressive behavior. In terms of addictiveness, these substances can cause severe chemical and psychological dependence. Physical withdrawal is less pronounced than with opioids. Cravings are intense and tolerance builds rapidly, which then leads users to take very dangerous amounts. For long-term health impacts and life expectancy, cognitive decline, chronic use leads to memory deficits, speech difficulties, and long-term disruptions in thinking and concentration. Bladder and kidney damage. There's something called a ketamine bladder. Again, just learned this. Long-term ketamine abuse causes severe, irreversible cystitis, I think I'm saying that right, leading to extreme pain, bloody urine, and frequently requiring surgical bladder removal. Psychological distress, persistent flashbacks, permanent psychosis, and severe depression are common among chronic abusers. And life expectancy is lowered primarily through secondary risks from using these drugs. So, accidental drowning or trauma due to a lack of pain perception, severe psychological distress leading to self harm, or fatal respiratory depression when you mix it with alcohol or opioids. Schedules and federal versus state laws. So, federal law, PCP is classified as a Schedule II drug, high abuse potential but historically accepted medical use through currently minimal. Ketamine is a Schedule III drug, moderate to low potential for physical dependence, accepted medical uses. And South Dakota state law, under South Dakota Law, Chapter 22 to 42, South Dakota mirrors federal scheduling but imposes strict statutory penalties for possession and distribution of any controlled substances. Sanctions for breaking the law. South Dakota utilizes a strict felony tier tracking system for drug offenses, and breaking these laws generally results in a record, mandatory prison sentences for higher tier distribution charges, fines, and mandatory asset forfeiting if money and property was tied to the trafficking of the drug. Penalties for possession versus distribution. Possession in South Dakota, sorry for my child, unauthorized possession of a Schedule I or II substance like PCP or a Schedule III substance like ketamine is prosecuted as a Class 5 or Class 6 felony, carrying a potential sentence of 2 to 5 years in prison, though first-time simple possession may allow for probation depending on other factors. For distribution, manufacturing or distributing these substances raises the charges to a Class 3 or Class 2 felony. A conviction can bring 10 to 25 years in prison. Distribution to a minor or distribution resulting in death triggers mandatory minimums, often 5 to 15 plus suspended proof years in a state facility. Additional social problems in communities, healthcare strain, vulnerability to crime, and economic impairment. Severely fractures family units, stable employment, social welfare networks. It also severely impairs cognitive judgment and physical responsiveness. Victims are at an elevated risk for sexual assault or physical victimization when drugged against their will. Acute overdoses and severe mental health crises from PCP and ketamine place a very large burden on local emergency rooms and facilities. Lastly, associated criminal activities. DUI and traffic fatalities. Driving under the influence of dissociatives is a major criminal issue as it creates distorted spatial awareness and slowed reaction times, causing a lot of bad accidents. Users frequently engage in theft, fraud, and burglary to fund their habits and specifically target vet offices or medical facilities to steal ketamine supplies. Sorry, I know this was long-winded. I appreciate you listening to my presentation on disassociatives. Thank you.